Hey everybody, Garrett with The Actor's Dream, back with Hannah and Deonza. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to memorize monologues faster. Once again, if you like these videos, please like and subscribe down below. Leave any comments or questions in the comments section. Also, if you want to follow along, as a reminder, there's a link in the description that's going to take you to the actorsdream.com document section. You can download everything we're working on and work right alongside us, okay? So jumping right in, we're going to be returning to a monologue that you've seen in the intro videos from Will Eno's Tragedy, a Tragedy, okay? So we're going to be building on, in that video, we were talking through it with story and logic, if you remember. And now we're going to be integrating the idea of organizing layers of meaning, patterns, structure, alongside the techniques of linking and memory palace and loci, all together so that we can show you how you can begin to use all those separate tools in your tool belt now to approach a monologue, okay? So if you look at your monologue now, we're going to start out, again, of the three main methods, right? Logic, story, linking, and memory palace. What did we say is the first one you want to start with?
Logic.
Logic and story, right? So we talked about that in the video, okay? So in that video, you took half and you took half, okay? So what I want you to do, first off, is read through the monologue and remind yourself, refresh yourself of the story. But as you're reading through it now, any patterns, anything that pop for you, can you just throw those out as you're looking at it right now?
Yes.
So again, and also if there's lists, which there are at least one in there, let's just go through that together right now. And as you see them, just throw them out there.
At the end of the first line, it says one, and then line 2, it says let's see once.
Right.
So one and once.
Right, so there's a connection there, right? In line 3, we have a list. You know exactly what you need to do for that, right? Keep going.
There's everyone in 4 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to 4, it says it was great. Everyone thought and felt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of alliteration.
Yep. Also, because of it, in line 2, let's see, once there was a world and it had, everything in the world in it, and then they list all of it. It was great, everyone thought and felt, right? So there's a lot of repetition there. Everyone thought and felt, then everyone. So it's almost like everyone becomes a character, right? So it's not then people, or then, no, everyone.
Yeah.
And that's repeated, everyone, everyone. And then we go to people. Started hurting and killing, who? Everyone, right?
And 6 and 7 repeat the word started.
Exactly. But then this boy or girl. So then we have everyone, people, boy or girl, right? We're going from a big general term to the individual.
Followed by another everyone.
Yeah, was born that everyone loved. And the child said to who?
Everyone.
Right. I would be scared too. So
Everyone.
was scared, right? So again, and this seems like common sense, right? But if you look at that, reminding yourself of that and noticing that pattern, then you're not thinking of, well, is it people or a person or they or no, it's everyone. Right? That's the body. Right? Everyone was scared together, right? That really summarizes that whole those first 10 lines, right? Then we get from lines 11 through 14, what do we notice there?
They all start with and.
Yeah. And all their worries turned into a sort of comfort, right? And also we have, worry, comfort. We have that comparison. Doubts, faith, right? New people born. New words invented. And then 15, newness, right? Because it's expanding on the previous line. Reigned over the world in the story. And then we have a random thing, right? Then a bright white horse showed up. Then the next line speaks to the randomness, right? I don't know why or what happened, right? Logically, right? So, okay, well, that was random. Okay, and I don't know why, because I always fell asleep. And now we're at the end of the story. And now, where were we? Where was he as a child? Literally, he was in his where? his bedroom,
His bed, yeah.
right? So at the end though, in my room, who else is there?
Mother and father.
Right. And they whisper sweet dreams, which is then repeated down later, right? I can see them leaning over, pulling the sheet up and whispering something simple, alliteration. Good night, sweet dreams, someone is whispering over me. Why? Because they love me. And it's nighttime. And they wanted to say something. There's three things, right? So they said those things, they whispered them because they loved me. It's nighttime. And they wanted to say something. And then repeat. So 20, line 20, look at line 20 and 24. Good night, sweet dreams, bookends. And then good night, sweet dreams, they whisper. Right? Good night, sweet dreams, someone is whispering over me. Good night, sweet dreams. Who whispers? They. So someone, and then specifically they. Right? And then walk backwards out the door and close it. Okay? So again, just a combination of patterns, structure, logic, story, really solidifying those things for ourselves, right? And again, with these methods, you're not necessarily going to nail the verbatim text the first time, right? But are you going to get 80%? Enough to get up on your feet? Absolutely, okay? So we're going to talk through this a few ways. The first is, again, we have logic and story, we have the basic idea of this down, right? Now let's look into linking, right? Because again, you can choose to link this whole monologue, but guess what? It's a waste of time, and that's not the point, right? This is not about being, going down the rabbit hole of being overly academic about things, right? It's what's useful, what's going to save you time, and what's being more efficient, right? So yes, it's going to take you some time to learn these techniques, but once you learn them, apply them specifically and strategically, not just across the board, right? You can do a memory palace for this whole thing, and guess what? You're going to waste a lot of time because you don't need it. Story and logic did it for you already, okay? So if we're looking at anything in this, first off, do we notice anything that we could use linking for? Or memory palace for?
The list on number
In 3, right? So if we're using linking, right, we would just link rock to tree, tree to ocean, ocean to animal, animal to people, people to houses, houses to governments, right? Now, if you're using memory palace, right, you would do the same thing, but just with your locations, right? The other thing you can do, and this is a little bit more next level, and it's potentially overly complicated, but if you were doing a lot of memory palace work, right, for the whole piece, you could put rocks on a location, and instead of doing one location, rock one location, tree on the second, ocean on the third, you could put a rock on the first location and then link from there. Does that make sense? Almost like hanging a chain on that location. But again, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but if you want to try that, go for it. So just for the first 10, okay, let's go for the first 10. I want you can choose, you can link or you can use a memory palace for that third one, okay? And again, go through logic and story for yourself and go through the monologue, give you a couple minutes just to get it in your bones and in your body, and then we'll recite it, okay?
Very good.
All right, we're back with the first 10 lines of the monologue we're working on from Will Eno's Tragedy, a Tragedy. Who wants to give it their first shot?
I'll go.
All right, cool.
All right. If ever I asked for a story, either my mother or father would always tell me this one. Let's see. Once there was a world, and it had, everything in the world in it. Rocks, trees, oceans, animals, people, houses, governments, all of it. And everything was great, and everyone thought and felt. And then everyone started to imagine it being ruined and run down. And so people started hurting and killing everyone. Then a boy or girl was born that everyone loved due to their beauty. And the child said to everyone, I would be scared too. And everyone was scared together.
Great. So a couple things. One line you skipped. So that everyone started to imagine it getting ruined and run down. You got that. And that started happening in reality. So again, there's an imagined. They imagined it happening. Then it happened in reality. If you were going back and saying, well, how can I root this in? Right, story and logic, okay? I talk about they imagined, and then it manifested itself. And then that's what the rest of the story is about, right? The other thing that we didn't talk about, just another little again, alliterative thing, and everyone imagined it getting ruined and run down. RR, right? So all of those things can be little hooks for you to connect to those things. But again, 95% of that you got, and you spent about 5 minutes doing, right? So did you use linking or the memory palace for the
I used
objects?
memory palace
Okay.
and then linking for the list.
Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. Hannah, go for it.
So when I was a child, I would ask for a story at night, and my mother and father would always tell me this one. Let's see. Once there was a world, and there was, everything in it, in this world. Rocks, trees, oceans, animals, people, houses, governments, all of it. And the people, it was great. The people thought and felt. Goodness.
Then what happened?
Then
What did everyone do?
everyone started to imagine everything getting ruined and run down. And everything that they imagined started to happen in reality.
Great.
People started hurting and killing everyone. And then a boy or a girl was born, and everyone loved them due to their beauty. This child then said to everyone, I would be scared too. And so everyone was scared together.
Great, 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 right? And that's like, ah, right? But here's the thing, right? That heightened, it makes you think, right? You're not just boom, right? And even when I prompt you, it's like, okay, yeah, but I'm in that question, it connects it to the logic, right? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, boom, that's what's the connector,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing here to keep in mind, right, again, is there is no replacement for intentional repetition and time. There is no replacement for that, right? But can these two get up and start rehearsing or start improvising on their feet in about 5 or 10 minutes? Yes. Is that going to get you further along in the process? Yes, right? All of that's important so that you can get verbatim, you can get word perfect, you can get it in your bones, in your body, and then those other kind of things fall away, right? So great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work our way down through the rest of the piece. But what we're going to do first is we're going to take lines 11 through 14, okay? And we identified those as, right, they all start with and, right? And they all have those comparisons, right? So I'm not saying you have to do it this way. I'm just doing this to show you how you can apply memory palace or loci to the same thing, right? So if we're going from 11 to 14, right, and all their worries turned into a sort of comfort, and their doubts about things turned into a kind of faith, and new people were born during this, and new words were invented to talk about people with. Now, if you know what you're comparing it to, you don't have to create an image for that. Does that make sense? So if you know, well, what did the worries turn into?
Comfort.
Right. What did their doubts turn into?
Faith.
Faith, right? New words were what?
Invented.
Invented, right? And even if you have to remind yourself now, right? And new people were born, right? So if you want to create an image that includes the whole phrase, go for it. So new people being born, just like it could be just someone, just babies just popping out everywhere. You know what I mean? Doubts could turn into some, you could create that, or you can create an image out of doubt. And you know what the rest of the phrase is, right? You can create an image out of people or birth or whatever's going to help root that in you, in your locations. So what I want you to do is quickly, just for those 4, okay, and all their worries and their doubts and new people and new words, just use memory palace, similar to like linking in the list on 3, and do that, and then we'll come back and we'll have you recite those, okay? And then we'll just keep working our way through. All right, we're back now after having worked on using memory palace or loci for those 4 lines, right? So lines 11 through 14, we're just going to have you give it your best shot reciting that, and then we're going to summarize the entire piece and try to go through the whole thing, okay?
Right.
But first things first, we're going to go through those first 4 lines. So Deonza, can you give it a shot, just those first 4? Or those, 11 to 14?
And all of their worries turned to doubts. That's not it.
Great, start over, it's fine.
Okay. And all of their worries turned into a kind of comfort, sort of, and all of their doubts turned into a kind of faith, sort of. And new people were born during this time, and new words were invented to talk about people with.
Great. Hannah?
All right. And all of their worries turned into a kind of comfort, and all of their doubts turned into a kind of faith, sort of. And new people were born during this time, and new words were invented to talk about people with.
Beautiful. And again, you can use that as much or as little as you want, if at all. If story and logic, again, is the bread and butter, and that's, you already know the structure, great. If you get to something like that or any kind of phrasing that's not meaningful or that just isn't rooted, this is what you can do to give it some foundational strength, if that makes sense, right? So what I'm going to ask you guys to do now is we're going to put it all together, okay? So go through 1 through 14, remind yourself of those things, but you pretty much have it, right? So you don't have to rehearse these things in sequence, right? We've kind of drilled it in our heads when we're running a monologue, when we're running a piece, that we have to work it from the beginning to the end the whole time. Well, guess what? If you have it, put it away and work on the section or the sections that are most difficult, right? Something that a lot of people don't know either is the way our brain works, we remember beginnings and endings a lot more easily than middles, right? So for a lot of us, right, we remember the beginning of the monologue and the end, we can bring it home. But it's that middle chunk, so work the middle chunk more. If you know you have something, trust that it'll be there. So as you work now, remind yourself of the logic and story of the whole piece, right? But you've been working on 1 through 10. You just did 11 through 14. So really just focus on that last part and then run through it a couple times, and then we'll see how we are at the end. All right, and we're back. We're going to put it all together, right? So logic and story, linking, memory palace and loci, organization, structure, patterns, all the layers of meaning, visualizing, all of these things, putting it together, working on this piece and seeing where we are, okay? Now, one piece that we haven't talked about yet, because it's more in the actor's realm and not just the memorization realm, but I think it bears repeating here as we're working on this, right, is one other element, especially in a piece like this where the target for the actor is invisible, right? Whether it's the audience or the invisible camera in the play, whoever they're talking to, is that creating that target in a piece where they're remembering, the actor themselves are remembering, visualizing the story in front of you as it's unfolding is another layer that can help you, right? As you see that story unfold, it can help you connect those pieces together. So as we try to do this and as you're working at home, see if that's useful in cementing some of those things too, especially if that's something in terms of being a visual learner that's going to help you really see it and capture it, okay? So who wants to give it their best shot? Who wants to start out?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Hannah, you go first.
All right.
And
Whenever-
really see it. Yeah, sorry. Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Whenever I asked for a story at night, my mother and father always told me this one. Let's see. Once there was a world, and it had, all sorts of things in it, everything in this world. And it was great, and people thought and felt. And everything that they imagined started to happen. And they started to imagine everything getting ruined and run down. And everything that they imagined started to happen in reality. And people started hurting and killing everyone. And then a boy or a girl was born, and everyone loved them because of their beauty. And the child said, I would be scared too. And then everyone was scared together. And
See it. What was that first image in the memory palace that we did just previous?
And worry started to turn into a kind of comfort.
Great.
And doubt turned into a kind of faith, sort of.
Beautiful.
And new people were born during this time. And new words were invented to talk about people with. And newness, like, reigned over this world in this story. And then there was a bright white horse. But I don't remember why or what happened with it or any of the rest of it, because I always fell asleep. In the end, I can see my mother and my father leaning over me and pulling up the sheet and whispering something like, "Good night, sweet dreams. Good night, sweet dreams," someone whispers over me. Because they love me, because it's nighttime, because they want to say something. Good night, sweet dreams. And then they back out of the room and shut the door.
Yes! Woo! And did you see did you see it working? Right, exactly. And right, was that exactly correct? No, right? But you struggled through it,
Yeah.
right? And even the spirit of that, not only is it going to help you remember because your brain is firing, right? But in the context of this piece, the action of the actor in this piece, the witness, is remembering.
Yep.
So that's literally what you're doing, right? So it's useful, right? Beautiful. So, and then you know what you missed,
Yep.
right? About halfway through, you know you missed the list, right? But you didn't go back.
Oh my
right?
goodness, I did!
Or maybe you didn't.
I did
but,
until now.
but that's fine. But that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Because you know the list, right? You had a hiccup on the on that first on worries. Well, remember, okay, no, I got the image now, and it helped you get through the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So beautiful, beautiful. You got through it, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
And about 80-85% word perfect after 5 or 10 minutes, right? A lot better than you would have done just pacing back and forth, talking to yourself.
Oh yeah.
Okay, great. Deonza, give it a shot.
All right. If ever I ask for a story, my mother or father always told me this one. Let me see. Once there was a world, and it had, everything in the world in it. It had rocks, trees, ocean, animals, people, houses, governments, all of it. And it had everything in it. And everyone was happy. But then, people started to imagine it getting ruined and run down. And then what they imagined started happening in reality. And people started hurting and killing everyone. But then, a boy or a girl was born, and everyone loved them due to their beauty. And then the boy, the child said, "I would be scared too," to everyone. And then everyone was scared together. And then all of their worries turned into a sort of comfort, all of their doubts into a faith, kind of. And new people were born during this time. And new words were invented to talk about people with. And newness, reigned over the entire world. And then a bright white horse showed up. I don't know why
Beautiful.
or what happened with it, because I always fell asleep. And then, towards the end, my parents would whisper over me, "Good night, sweet dreams." I can almost see them leaning in,
Beautiful.
pulling the covers over my head, and whispering in my dark room, "Good night, sweet dreams," someone says, because they love me, because it is nighttime, and they want to say something. Good night, sweet dreams. And my parents quietly and slowly back out of the room and close the door.
Awesome. Great. So a couple things here, right? Do you see when you hiccuped on, Then a bright white horse showed up, right? Because that's where the logic stops, right? So you're going along with the story, then all of a sudden, oh, that doesn't make sense at all. And that's the point. Then a bright white horse, I don't know why, right? That was random, that was whatever. That was just manifested how you, right? So again, that's those logic things that both when it is logical or when it's illogical can really point you in the direction of not just how to remember it, but how to play it, right? What's actually the internal process of the character you're playing, right? The other thing too, just to remind us, if you can't say it in your own words, right? Both of you had to at times slightly paraphrase some things, right? Guess what? They still know what it meant. So time will give you the chance, and repetition will give you the chance, and feedback will give you the chance to correct those things, right? But if you can't say it in your own words, you don't understand it, and it's not meaningful, right? So, and again, saying it in your own words and saying it out loud sound like such common sense instructions, but so many of us don't do it. And actors on the community level, student level, and professional level, I see all the time, they don't do those two simple things. And directors, if you're watching, if you're working with actors and it doesn't seem like things are really hitting for them, whether it's through memorization or they're not getting the intentions, ask them to say it in their own words. Right? It's the easiest, quickest way to get a sense of if they really know what they're doing, in a literal sense. Because so many times as actors, you literally don't know what you're doing, right? The definition of action is to do, right? So this is not insulting your intelligence. Sometimes it's like, a month in, you're like, I don't know why I'm saying this line, right? So those are all important things to keep in mind. So once again, to wrap this up with monologues, right? Utilizing story and logic is going to be your bread and butter. But for those things that aren't inherently meaningful or logical, right, using linking, using loci, using the memory palace techniques can really, really root those things for you. Okay? So that's going to end us up with the monologues. Thank you so much for doing the work with us today. Again, if you liked the video, please like and subscribe. We're trying to grow this community. Memorization is the fundamental skill that all actors need but aren't taught, and we're trying to change that around here. So make sure you go to theactorsdream.com, check out all our other videos and resources. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.